Coming to paperback and e-readers, ISIS Legacy. The sorority secrets from the goddess next door are revealed in this all-new ISIS series adventure. Pre-order your copy of ISIS Legacy on Amazon.com today. I was watching Mr. Superboy's video where he was talking about how New York City Mayor Eric Adams proposed that drill rap be banned from social media. Now, Mr. Superboy didn't really know too much about New York politics, but as a New York resident for the last 48 going on 49 years, I believe I can give viewers a bit more in-depth analysis as related to your Eric Adams dysfunctional proposal. Now, your New York City Mayor Eric Adams, after the shooting and death of an 18-year-old young man who was a drill rapper, went on an emotional tirade where he talked about how we need to ban drill rap from social media in order to prevent people from going out here and committing crime. And he went on to blame drill rap for a lot of the crime here in New York City, and that was basically a straw man argument that was designed to do two things. One, it was a straw man argument to try to demonize black people and try to make them the face of crime, and two, it was a deflection to go out here and make people not look at many of the policies that are actually causing much of the crime here in New York City. Now, much of the crime here in New York City has nothing to do with rap music. No, most of the crime here has to do with a whole bunch of leftist policies established by white politicians like Andrew Cuomo and Bill de Blasio, the previous mayor of New York. Now, under your Andrew Cuomo and Bill de Blasio, they decided to go out here and change the bail system in 2020. And as they changed the bail system here in 2020, where they would have no cash bail for what they believed to be nonviolent offenses, what this did was lead to an explosion in crime here in New York City. Now, this bail reform policy has been a complete disaster, but many on the left refuse to repeal this policy because they would be directly held accountable for these failed policies, and that's the main reason why they go out here and looking to deflect instead of taking accountability for the failed policy that they put into place. Because after they went out here and created this bail reform, crime went through the roof, and that was even before the pandemic, because that policy was put in place in January of 2020, and crime was rising all throughout the city and up until March, and then it practically exploded as we had the lockdowns here in New York City, and the mayor and the governor decided to release most of the inmates from Rikers Island. This releasing of the inmates from Rikers Island, along with the bail reform and the lockdowns and the pandemic, led to that explosion in crime becoming a nuclear holocaust of crime that basically took the city all the way back to the dark days of the late 1970s and 1980s. Now, that is the real reason why crime has exploded here in New York, but many of your leftists, they don't want to talk about the real reason why crime has exploded here in New York. What they want to do is try to cover it up and look for all sorts of excuses to avoid going out here and admitting that their policies have practically failed. Now, here in New York, as the de Blasio administration has practically destroyed New York City's quality of life, many people did not like Bill de Blasio, the previous mayor, and they were hoping that Eric Adams, as he talked about trying to change things, would make things better. Your Eric Adams in 2020, went out here and ran on a campaign talking about how he was going to go out here and fundamentally change the city. And like Barack Obama, he talked a good game and ran his mouth, but we're not really seeing much change here in New York City. And a lot of people realized that they were getting swerved around New Year's Eve when your Eric Adams decided to go out here and stand with Bill de Blasio in the middle of Times Square during the Omicron surge. Now, your Eric Adams originally had planned to do his swearing in at City Hall, but then he canceled it due to the Omicron surge. But what he did instead was decide he was going to get sworn in on New Year's Eve at the Times Square as the ball was dropping. And the reason why he did this was because he wanted to show the white leftists that he was going to play ball their way. And that really angered a lot of New Yorkers who thought they were going to get change, but we didn't get any change from your Eric Adams, who still has these policies in place like this jab mandate where you have to take a jab in order to go to work here in New York. The only city in the country that has this policy. And we also have him with this jab mandate still, so you can go into local bars and restaurants. Dysfunctional policies put in place by your Bill de Blasio that have practically destroyed the entire leftist party in all the cities that have followed him, and led to many of those politicians with having extreme low approval ratings. But your Adams decided to go along with him, even though he ran on a platform of change. He decided to go out here and follow the lead of a Bill de Blasio, a man whose approval rating is lower than your Osama bin Laden, but he did this because he wanted to gain favor with those white leftist slave masters. And again, this is just him trying to gain that favor with those white leftists because as the baby boomer bootlick that he is, he's looking to gain their favor in the hopes of getting into higher office. And that's what he was trying to do by hitching his wagon to your Bill de Blasio. And when your Bill de Blasio decided not to run for office, that's when your Eric Adams wound up with egg on his face. Now, what your Eric Adams wanted to do by signing on to Bill de Blasio's wagon was he was hoping that he could create a covert contract with Bill de Blasio where he would go out here and maintain his policies, and then what he would do is offer him a cabinet position when he ran for governor. But your Bill de Blasio, realizing that he probably was not going to win that race for governor or even get past the primaries, what happened was he decided not to run. And I really do believe that the reason why he decided not to run was not only because he saw that his approval ratings and his poll numbers were trash, but because I believe the head of the Democratic Party probably gave him a call and told him to drop out of the race because he would be made as the poster child for jab mandates. He would be made as the poster child for the decline of New York City, and they didn't want him hurting the party, so they told your Bill de Blasio to drop out of the race, and that's probably why they did this. And when this happened, your bootlicking cream of wheat man, Eric Adams, what happened to him was he wound up with a big plate of egg on his face, and he saw that his aspirations for higher office as related to cabinet positions in the governor's office, that practically fizzled away. Now, what's happened now that Bill de Blasio has announced that he is not running for governor is that your Eric Adams looks to hitch his wagon to Andrew Cuomo. That's why he had that lunch with your Andrew Cuomo. He again is hoping to hitch his wagon to yet another high-ranking politician, but that just shows us all the bootlick that he is. And your Eric Adams really shows us how weak he is, because as he talked about change, nothing is really changing here in New York City. And that really showed with that tragic shooting of this 18-year-old young man who lost his life as a result of a somewhat beef here in the streets. And instead of holding the policies that were created by men like Bill de Blasio and Andrew Cuomo accountable for this boy's death, what your Eric Adams did was he wanted to deflect by saying that this all had to do with drill rap, but this had nothing to do with drill rap at all. No, what happened here was the complete collapse of New York due to leftist policies, and what your Eric Adams is doing is towing the party line in an effort to ensure that the white men that he's pandering to don't get held accountable for all of the policies they put in place that clearly are failing, like your bail reform and like their pandemic lockdowns that practically led to the complete collapse of the economic base here in New York City and New York State. And they also don't want to talk about how the jab mandates are keeping many black men and women unemployed. And that all shows how your Eric Adams really is not all about helping out New Yorkers. And what he wants to do is make black people the face of crime, showing us all how much of a sellout he is and how much he has betrayed all of those black voters who thought he was about change. But nothing here is changing here in the city. In fact, crime continues to get worse because your Eric Adams and the Manhattan District Attorney, who was also another bootlick, this beta male, Alvin Bragg, has gone out here going on record saying that he was not going to prosecute certain crimes such as shoplifting and even resisting arrest from police. And his policies were so insane that even Miss Kathy Hochul, or Miss Kathy as I like to call her, has gone out here and reprimanded your Alvin Bragg after many white people went out here and complained, stating that his policies were too soft on crime. She practically threatened your Alvin Bragg with taking his job if he did not go out here and prosecute all of this crime. So the state of New York here is in a really bad place of dysfunction due to incompetent leadership, and your Eric Adams is not looking to lead New York. What he's looking to do is bootlick and brown nose his way into a higher position, and what he wants to do is have Mayor of New York on his resume so that he can try to get in with other white supremacists, because what's happening here with your Eric Adams is no different than what happened with Barack Obama. Here we have a case of a baby boomer Negro who thinks he has arrived, thinks that white people like him, thinks that he's gained the favor and approval of white people, and what he's doing now is scrambling around like a desperate rat looking for some white man to be on the shoulder of, and he's looking to see who will let him be their butler and who he can go out here and serve. He's out here looking to gain acceptance and approval of white people, and he's not looking out and having a vision and a direction for New York City. And that really, again, shows how he has doubled and tripled down on jab mandates here in New York City. Even though the Omicron wave has completely declined, he refuses to open up the city until his white masters tell him to go open up the city. And again, that really again shows the weakness of this so-called mayor who talks tough and talks a good game, but the more you listen to his words, the more you see that he is complete hot air. And one of the biggest hot air statements he has ever made was going out here and talking about banning your mumble rap from social media, because your Eric Adams has no power and influence over social media, and he cannot go out here and talk about banning any sort of art form as related to rap music. And to blame rap music, again, this is what a white supremacist goes out here and does, because the white supremacist, he sees all black boys as criminals, and he sees only gangster rap, not the overall art form of rap music. And he doesn't understand that rap music was originally meant to be positive. And the young man who he wanted to talk about was the victim of this crime. He wanted to make him out to look like a bad guy, but this young man, his own family came out here and said that this young man was living with his father over the last couple of years. He had been on the honor roll and talked about the truth regarding this young black man. But your Eric Adams wanted to try to make this into, again, a whole thing where he was going to demonize rap music, and he was trying to make rap and hip-hop the bad guy, and basically he wanted to do this to make black people look like the people committing most of the crime here in New York by proxy. Now, most of the crimes here in New York they're committed by a diverse group of people. And what we're seeing with many of those violent incidents that take place here, like the one where the Asian woman was pushed on the train to her death, was a lot of homeless and mentally ill people are the ones committing a lot of these crimes. And the big problem is, one, that the bail reform system lets a lot of these individuals out and makes it a revolving door here in New York City. And also, we have a problem in that your mental health facilities do not have the resources to deal with all of the people who are homeless or mentally ill. And that's, again, a part of the de Blasio administration's complete failure as related to their Thrive NYC program, where $1 billion from the city was practically taken, allegedly, by Mayor Bill de Blasio and his wife. And no one will talk about how the Thrive NYC billion was never ever found that was supposed to deal with mental health, or the complete failure of the de Blasio administration's policies on the homeless, which has led to an explosion of the homeless population. As somebody who worked with the Strive Job Readiness Program to help homeless adults back in 2000, I can tell you that this explosion is due to a complete mismanagement of the Department of Homeless Services, because I work with the Department of Homeless Services representatives as related to trying to recruit homeless adults for the Job Readiness Program. And in 2000, when Giuliani was running the city, DHS wasn't the greatest, but at least they had some structure. But under de Blasio, it has become a pork barrel program where these hotel owners get paid $5,000 a month for a room, while your homeless individuals don't get the services that they need, such as mental health counseling, or an effort to recruit them into affordable housing and get these people back on their feet. So that's why we're seeing this explosion in homeless individuals on the subway system and in the streets, because the Department of Homeless Services under the de Blasio administration has done nothing and will continue to do nothing, because your Eric Adams, being the bootlick that he is, he does not want to upset his white masters, and he wants to keep everything in place the way the white man wants it to be, because he wants to gain favor with that white man in order to try to advance himself further up in office. Again, no different than your Barack Obama, who promised hope and change to Americans and then went out here and gave Americans, especially black Americans, nothing, and then wanted to condescend down to black Americans. That's the playbook that your Eric Adams is trying to play here in New York. Unfortunately, I see the final fate of your Eric Adams ending very badly, because he's alienated a lot of New York power brokers, and he's alienated a lot of New York City prominent business owners. And with his arrogance and his attitude, he has really turned off a lot of people that he thinks are in his pocket, but those people are secretly planning behind his back. When I look at your Eric Adams and his whole approach over the last month, he's reminding me a lot of former New York Governor Eliot Spitzer. Now, your Eliot Spitzer, like Eric Adams right now, was running his mouth, talking a big game, and going out here making threats to certain power brokers, like your, at the time, Joe Bruno, who ran the Senate here in New York, State Senate, and your Sheldon Silver, who ran the state legislature. And what happened was, with your Eliot Spitzer, after he ran his mouth, he wound up in a situation where he got caught up in a prostitution scandal, and your Eliot Spitzer, after 1 year in office, wound up losing his job. And that's the fate that I see happening to your Eric Adams, who continues to run his mouth and does not have any sort of filter, because he's running on emotion. He's so giddy to be in with these white supremacist slave masters. He thinks that he's arrived in the house, but he doesn't understand that the masters of that house are already planning to ensure that he exits, and he exits in the most ignominious fashion. So he doesn't see the chess game being played, because he's so emotional about arriving and thinking that he's going to be their overseer over New York City, and he's going to be the overseer over these Negroes, that he doesn't understand that the same white supremacists who went out here and appointed him also are planning his elimination. And again, it's all part of the chess game, because the white supremacist knows that what types of black folks to put into positions. And again, passively they'll let you be a black mayor, but aggressively they're setting you up for failure to ensure that we won't see another black person in these types of offices. And what they do is get the people who they know are going to be dysfunctional, like your Eric Adams and your Alvin Braggs. These bootlicks will go out here and rubber stamp policies and think they're getting ahead, not understanding that the white supremacist has already set you up for failure. And when he sets you up for failure, it's so that other black people won't get in. And that's what this baby boomer butter biscuit eating bootlick does not understand. But he's sitting there talking about how it's rap music that's creating all of this crime. No, it's not about the rap music creating the crime. As a resident of New York City, again for the last 48 going on 49 years, I can tell you that New York City was fairly safe from about 2000 to about 2016 or so. And then when your Bill de Blasio came in and started putting in his far left policies, that's when the city started to decline. And his mismanagement of numerous government offices like the Department of Homeless Services led to a lot of the crime in the streets, not to mention him and Andrew Cuomo implementing the bail reform policy that was proposed by your Jumaane Williams, who was a black man. So all of these policies are the real reason why we have so much crime here, not your rap music. And blaming rap music, again, is just an excuse to avoid taking responsibility for all of the failures of these leftists and their policies, which people clearly see are the problem. And what's happening here in New York is what happened back in the early 90s, where your Mario Cuomo and David Dinkins wound up alienating many of the residents here in New York City. And that's what led to the election of Rudy Giuliani, and George Pataki was the just complete directionlessness of New York's whole political machine in the early 90s, which was also due to a lot of corruption and fraud. And also a lot of people, they're seeing the crime, they're seeing the dirt, and they're seeing the just complete lack of leadership. And that's the real reason why everything is falling apart here. But your Eric Adams wants to say it's rap music. And again, that's to try to make it look like black people are the problem by proxy. But black people aren't the problem. It's white leftist policies that did damage to New York City. And that's the story that most people don't know about. And I'm hoping that this video gives Mr. Superboy some perspective on the politics here in New York City, because as a guy who's on the ground, I think I can give everybody a better picture of how things are bad here and the reason why things are so bad here. So this video is not going to be monetized because, you know, YouTube doesn't like it when you speak against their leftists. So if you guys could drop a donation to the Cash App, it would be greatly appreciated. And if you could pick up a book like ISIS Legacy on Amazon.com, that would also help me stay on the air. So I'm hoping this gives Mr. Superboy some perspective on things, and I'm hoping that gives everybody a better understanding of how bad things here are in New York. So that's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe. Now available in paperback and e-readers, ISIS, Revenge of the Cyber Goddess. The goddess next door takes on the threat of a deadly digital diva driven to destroy the world in this action-packed, all-new ISIS series adventure. Get ISIS, Revenge of the Cyber Goddess, featuring a bonus pin-up and the other 2 books in the Cyber Goddess saga at online booksellers everywhere today.